G'day friends and fans, welcome to Dave Talk Stuff Ukraine War Update for the 1st of July 2026. Now there are a couple of things that are going to happen over the next coming months, though it could take up to a year before the ripple effect really shows. Now the first one's a story that started at least a week ago. I saw it in the defense news couple of days ago. It was in the Russian news yesterday. That is about developing a new weapon or how to use existing weapons to destroy Russian runways. Successful or not, that is a game changer if they're successful. If not, it's a huge setback for Europe. Although 250 euros, you may say, oh, that's nothing. No, that's just what they're giving away as a prize, which is not much, considering weapons development and testing could be in the millions. So my guess is it's a lure for ideas. Get all the outside ideas. But in reality, I think it's a distraction. I think they're already preparing for floating some sort of drone on a balloon to vertically drop onto Russian airways, because one of the holes allegedly in air defenses is stratospheric penetration. That gap, which I think is why the Russians were building and bringing in the S-550, because the S-500 just didn't have the range. And they're looking to cover everything from stratosphere to suborbital. And suborbital devices, North Korea, China, Russia, and America have all tested suborbital devices. These are, you fire a rocket up, and instead of launching a standard satellite, it launches a bomb. But this bomb doesn't fall back down to Earth immediately. No, it does a suborbit, not a complete orbit, or not even reaching the height of an orbit, but coming through the stratosphere at an angle that deflects, particularly if it's a stealth, ceramic or something, or carbon fiber, very hard to detect, and it will look just like a comet or falling space debris. And it won't be until it's too late to notice that it's where it's targeted at. Particularly with Russia watching the polls for American missiles instead of, European launched missiles. All right, so destruction of airports definitely would be a game changer. The second one, this is more about production and productivity. If Europe can, through 3D printing, bring drone production from 1,500 to 3,000 a month in France, that is a game changer. The majority of drones in Ukraine, whether you want to believe it or not, I didn't know this, were made in France. I thought it was the UK and Poland, but it's actually France makes half the drones. But they're made with Chinese parts. But if they could get drone production up, which means actually more production, this apparently requires more copper, but there's currently, allegedly, a copper shortage, which is why South Africa is looking to reopen one of the two copper mines there that they previously shut down for safety. There is enough copper, it's just not enough copper mines currently active to meet world demand for copper right now. So a lot of copper is used. Metal jackets, copper. A lot of these shell casings aren't brass. Yeah. So Ukraine is bringing out the worst in humanity, of course, the greed, the narcissism, the propaganda, which I try to cut through every day. It is increasingly difficult to convince people that things are not going the way they seem. Now, the majority of people rather get the Ukraine news from well-established channels with Ukrainian connections. And so they want to hear how Ukraine is destroying Russian tanks and killing lots of Russians. I don't do that here. And I'm not going to do that here. I'm not going to take glee in the deaths of others. Now, there's been a dramatic strike. One of the reasons why there's a lot of copper right now in high demand is the fact that every time Ukraine gets its energy grid back up, Russia strikes, and strikes hard, its energy grid. Actually, sorry, almost forgot. Third thing that may be a game changer. Zelensky, although if you like it or not, he is the one who is running the Ukrainian war for Ukraine. And he has issued, like it or not, it's an edict. His first edict was a month ago. That was relevant to increase the amount of deaths on, kill more Russians was the edict. Although it's not his first edict, but first public edict that came out about him having direct control of army policy. The second one was the edict to strangle Crimea, to force people out of Crimea. All of them. To force everybody living in Crimea out. And then he would continue that campaign of terror, and he did use the word terror, to terrorize and choke people out of eastern Ukraine. I believe that one is really going to bite his ass, but the UN is doing nothing. But ethnic cleansing, man, that is not on, right? Especially the Crimean Tatars who've been there for centuries. Yes, they're not native to Crimea, but no one is native to Crimea. It was first settled by the Greeks. Ukrainians come down from the north. Yeah. All right, so we have a new action, and we have a lot of action actually in Sumy and surrounding areas today. What will it lead to? It depends, because most of the time, Russia never follows up. It's rare that they have more than a casual interest in drawing troops off from the front to Sumy. Right now, the Russians want pressure, not panic. And that's a fine, very fine line. When it comes to war, you can make a lot of mistakes in the early days of the war, and they will not resonate until later. That's usually it's underestimating your production, underestimating the course of weaponry, and believing that you will always have technological superiority. Right now, Russia seems to be more interested in volume than technology. That is, to build up the volume of what they've got rather than develop new weapons. Although they still are developing new weapons, they're just merely seeking to improve the ones they've got. Now, there's a lot of activity here, but that's all it is activity. Nothing has changed hands, although they are trying to push out and push along, go along the border, create this border buffer zone. A lot of memes about Putin and Crimea. No, Putin was not forced to talk about Crimea. That was the highly edited clip. And I don't think anybody cares. And I don't have access to the Russian clip. And I don't speak Russian, so I cannot say for certainty how many times he mentioned Crimea and how that he'd get back to Crimea once he had finished the general weekly roundup, in which, again, they said they're about 80% complete. Right, operations are somewhere between 79 and 80% complete. That they have a list of targets and goals they wish to achieve before they start. I actually forget. I think prosecuting. I think it actually translates to prosecuting to the fullest the end of conflict. So, what does that mean? They will take steps to make sure the Ukraine will not attack them again, is what the reporter was told, prosecuting the end. So whatever that is, whatever that end goal is, we may, if let's say 80%, how long this war's been going for. So that gives it, what, another year and a half to 2 years, does it not? Or somewhere close to that, give or take, a couple of months here and there, given that, remember, Putin doesn't consider the conflict starting in 2022, but 2014. Remember, if you're trying to understand the Russians, you have to understand all, not just, and you have to cut through it. You can't take the West's interpretation. You have to actually look at it from their side, their news, what they say their goals are, and then say, right, how much of this is bullshit? Well, let's start with 50% and work from there and go through how many of their actions meet their words. And it's surprising how much we have broken promises by Zelensky that the West just seemed to ignore. Now we have, of course, an increased interest in this area of the front. But again, I believe that this is just a killing field. Draw Ukrainians in, keep them busy, grind them down to keep them off the lineman front and other areas. Although you'd think that strategy would be they'd open up a little bit more because that strategy is sort of working, and it'd work more if they could lure more Ukrainians off the front. But then you would get intervention, like the 100,000 mercenaries sent into the Ukraine at the beginning of the Russian intervention in 22. So Russia doesn't want a repeat of that. So they are not going to open up too many more fronts. Otherwise, yeah. As long as the Europeans think there's still a chance of winning this war their way, and they actually do want to cut the Americans out, by the way, but not completely. They want to sideline American intelligence and make sure they don't interfere with the British operations in Moscow and stuff like that. They want to topple Putin and prove once and for all European superiority. Yeah. And put America in its rightful place behind the Europeans under liberal world order. And of course you have the Democrats who want the liberal world order because they want a place at the table of power forever. But no one has power at the table forever. There's always someone who's going to snipe you, gripe you, or pretty much you're just going to die of old age. You're just never going to have power for long. There's always someone who's going to take your place. And in the grand scheme of things, empires are getting shorter, not longer. And as someone said, China's had its day in the sun 3 times already. And India's twice tried and failed to be a world power. They're never going to stop. They're just going to, the world's just going to keep turning and history's going to keep repeating. And someone down 100 years down the line will be talking about a conflict in Ukraine again. Because one thing about history and conflict zones, they tend to repeat over and over again. Ukraine has been a conflict zone before this, I'm not just talking about World War II. And it will be again, because that is, once an attitude sets into human history, it seems to repeat over and over and over again. Does that mean Germany will march across the Rhine? And not exactly. No war plays out the same every time. But for now, Russia is advancing and taking more territory. And right now, the Ukrainians are still pinning their hopes on a victory, either by direct defeat using drone warfare, or, and again, this wasn't long ago they said, this area of the front is going to be quiet until Kupiansk falls. And Kupiansk hasn't fallen, but the Russians have gained more territory, and they're putting pressure on Kupiansk, which I thought they would eventually would do, but I thought they'd do it here first to help cut off Krasnokovia. But targets of opportunity. They saw an opening and they took it. And that is how most of the fronts decided. Not days or weeks of planning, but months of planning, hundreds of different operations, and waiting for all the things to fall into place. And then within a moment of hours, they hit it. And probably and because Ukraine falls into patterns, it's predictable that they will once again try to keep as try to sneak, a rail convoy to get something through to Kupiansk, or at least to here to start bolstering this front. But I thought they'd push through here first and set up artillery to yoink, yoink, yoink. But they're going here. They're pushing closer to here to put pressure on Kupiansk, which I thought they wouldn't do until they're laying siege to Savansk. And they're not going to do that until they've taken Lyman and Savalsky. But again, targets of opportunity may have presented themselves. Supply depot, most likely. But as you can see, the Russians are trying to keep up, trying to not allow the Ukrainians to flank them, because the Ukrainians can flank them. But at the same time, the Russians need only advantage. Only advantage is the fact that the Ukrainians pick fixed positions, so the Russians could come up knowing where they are and hit them from the front and the side. Front, side. Come up from behind. Side. And the Ukrainians, it's like fighting three armies. You might fight two, but three? Now, along the front, they've made all sorts of small gains, but again, you can see there's been a breakthrough here. But no major town has fallen. But the Dobropillia front has broken. The Russians have broken through the front in Dobropillia, but they have not gone past the centre. They have been able to reach the centre, but there is fighting at this rail junction and street fighting up here. But there is no Dobropillia has not fallen. There's breakthroughs in other areas, but again, nothing significant. And in most of the front, it is the usual grind. Although the Russians have broken through in parts, they have not completely. The Ukrainians are right now trying to repel the Russians and push them back. Today's actions can take up to a week before we'll see whether or not the Ukrainians will fall back permanently. But as you know, they never admit to the positions they abandoned or the people they leave behind. War is heck, and pity the fool who glorifies war or think that war brings them glory. But if you look at the map, when you see here Putin talking about 8%, is that only because he only wants this part? Only considers this secondary? Or not at all? I do believe that at least this part of Kherson's a bargaining chip. I don't know how much of Zaporozhye, south of Zaporozhye, they consider a bargaining chip, if at all. Because I don't see Ukraine going, well, if you can help Zaporozhye, you can have everything. No. But let's see. 15, 15, 15. It's 45. There's no way this is 5, 5 or 5, 5, 10. No, it's. I don't think 80% is accurate. And again, it's the same speech he's given before. And don't say it's that he's getting Alzheimer's or old or whatever. No, I think he's giving the same rage bait as he's done before. Give the Russians what they want to hear, and behind the scenes, rage out. But he hasn't. There's been no change yet in commanders. Unusual. By now, I expected to see a huge rotation of troops. They have an influx of recruits. Are they increasing the size of their army? That's something that will only play out through open source intelligence and other sources as they learn. Because as you know, neither side publishes their full army or full anything. Now, Ukraine has been hit several times by drones. Like I said, they've taken out the power. Before I continue, this channel is sponsored by you, the viewing audience. Empire Valves, that's one word, empirevalves.myshopify.com. Your one-stop shop for enchanting treasures based on my writing. Please and thank you. Thank you for your purchase. Right. Ukrainian air defenses intercepted 130 drones and a missile, recording hits at 17 locations. And if you believe that, I've got a bridge to sell you. We don't know how many how many there really were, because don't forget that they're using a huge amount of drones all the time. Right. Now, Russia has made a formal application to the UN, which has been met with silence. General Secretary has been disappointing, did not answer any of the substantial questions put forward, which the Russian Deputy Foreign Minister has taken as a snub, that the UN is not going to investigate allegations of war crimes again in the attack of the college at Starobosk, despite the UN High Commissioner and others visiting the site and agreeing that it was not a military target. Today, all they received is non-substantive answers. Means, yes, we're aware of the attack. Yes, we don't like the attack. Yes, we're still looking at your application. Yeah. This UN is uninterested. It's called stability maintenance. All they want is to make sure that nothing gets in the way of the UN seizing total control of the world. And that includes sacrificing Russia. If Russia hasn't figured out by now that China is willing to sacrifice them for power, that there is no friendship in BRICS, that it's all a facade, that Modi and Putin are being played against each other to see who's going to bring Xi the bacon. And right now, Xi's eyeing off fear that Putin is also in secret talks with Modi for carving up the world. So, and the biggest disaster is going to occur at once this war is over, and that is all the tit for tats. Right, the Ukrainian people are going. People are going to really start to get sick of them. Are really sick. I mean, start. But I mean, you haven't seen nothing yet. Europe is going to get sick of Ukrainian doing as they please. We keep hearing how they've made substantial gains to joining Europe. According to Russia, that's all hot air. That several countries are still raising concerns about corruption and crime. And this is one of the latest. Monaco bombing, attack on an oligarch who was cleared by British and French for having no ties to Putin. Yet Ukrainians attacked him because he's Russian. This is inviting. And of course, this is what Ukraine wants. They're inviting Russian retaliation so they can point to the Russians and go, see, they're animals. But you're the ones provoking the attack. No, we're just highlighting. We didn't attack Monaco. That's just Russian disinformation. But the mainstream news controls the flow of information still. So the vast majority of people remain ignorant of the facts. But Czechoslovakia has said it will too revoke the reward for the Ukrainian leader because of his honouring of a national group tied to World War II and atrocities. Again, Zelensky's Nazi problem is coming back to bite him in the ass. His idea of a strong Ukraine, a national identity for Ukraine, he's holding up Ukrainian nationalists who swapped sides multiple times during World War II and during the Nazi occupation. They killed many. The Ukrainian nationalists killed many foreigners in Ukraine and in Poland, and may have taken part in other massacres. The Russia said they had no choice because Europe won't denazify Ukraine. And again, it's up to you to believe it or not. But you look around you look at the hysteria around the world whenever you talk about Nazis, and you have people in Germany talking openly about killing politicians because they believe they're Nazis. So do not think for a second that that the majority of people are good. The majority of people are passive. There's a difference. Now, Poland, I believe it was 3 days ago, told Ukraine, we had an agreement. You have not kept your agreement. We asked for Russian technology that you've captured, and you instead put it up for auction. When Ukraine failed to honour their agreement on a drone deal, does it mention what the drone deal was here? Because I think there were two deals. One was the technology transfer. Yeah, that's what it is. This is about the technology transfer. Now, the Ukrainians maintain control of the drone factory. Poland wants to expand and build their own drones, and Ukraine won't release the technology to them. Initially, the Ukrainians said, "Yeah, we'll give us a couple of MiGs and we'll consider it." You know what? Consider, yeah. If anybody says consider it, that's a measle word. It's no, it's on delivery, bro. That's how it should be. Now, one deal that hasn't been reneged on and that is the transfer of S-300s. Now, the S-300s have been transferred, but that was apparently Polish S-300s, not Ukrainian. Now, here we go. Do we have the footage? Show us the footage, or I'm calling bullshit. Oops, hold on. Sorry. All right. No. All right. So, no video. I thought so. They rarely show the video. Doesn't mean it didn't happen. It just means, yeah, it just means we'll never know the truth. Who shot what, where, or when. Because you may shoot a video. You may shoot an S-400. You may see it explode. You may see it explode within proximity on your radar to the other aircraft. That doesn't mean you shot that aircraft down. That aircraft could have flown off, or the pilot decided to eject because he panicked, or, as the original report, the aircraft, already damaged, was no longer flight worthy, and the missile explosion was just icing on the cake, I suppose. It's like during World War II, how many people, I shot down a Heikel, sir. Which one? Oh, it's the one with the white stripes on it. You're the 17th to claim that today, son. Yeah. It is not beyond the realm of possibility that a whole bunch, right, of things came together. But it's rare because usually Ukraine doesn't let its aircraft get within range of the front. And again, initially the report was it wasn't shot down, that it ejected after being damaged in an earlier drone attack. So they've put out too many different stories, not the Russians, the Ukrainians. And now the Russians putting out a story they shut it down with an S-400. It's just, you have to produce video evidence. Otherwise, after 24 hours, you can claim anything. You got to do it on the day within time to be credible. So while I'm not calling entirely bullshit on this, I'm just saying, it, in the grand scheme of things, this is just another feel-good story for the Russians, but it's not going to really make a difference overall. Like, Ukraine's lost a lot of aircraft, and they don't care about it. Ukraine doesn't seem to care about anything, and when you get that sort of tunnel vision in war, that's when you start sending women to war, start talking about, relocating your children to other countries. Well, actually, Ukraine did that, didn't they? And now they're regretting that because they won't come back. Their families won't come back. They're now panicking over the children sent to other countries. Now, Russia has facilitated the return of some of the children from those families who fled. Now, I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong, but splitting up your family to, take your children to a foreign country to live a better life doesn't always work out like that. A lot of people always think, flee my problems, they go away. No, they don't. Ukraine is one of these things that are just going to keep getting worse until it gets better. Now, the Russian foreign minister has his own opinions on this, and I have my opinions, and you have your opinions. War doesn't decide who's right. It only decides who's left. And who's left after Zelensky gets to decide what happens in Ukraine. Because I do not see Zelensky lasting. I know I've said it, but many times. I don't know if or when, but I do not see historically anybody with half a brain realizing that there's going to be anything good that comes out of keeping Zelensky in office or in power or even letting him walk free from this mess. But world leaders don't want to set a precedent. They don't know what to do with Zelensky yet. This is the Ukrainian conundrum that is going around NATO right now. He's broken his word. He can't keep his mouth shut. He won't end the war. And now that he's losing, do they want to do a General Tay? For those who don't know, during the Vietnam War, when things were going bad, they had a coup and made things worse with General Tay, putting him in charge, and things got even, and morale went down, not up. The army did not function properly after that because they no longer believed they were fighting for a democracy. That's the legacy of LBJ, folks. And now we've got the Biden legacy, Zelensky. He's a dictator, but he's our dictator, just like LBJ. And Trump, just like Nixon, doesn't know what to do because you remove Tay, things get worse. You keep Tay, things will keep getting worse. There's no getting better. The coup has happened. The Zelensky takeover happened. You had no ability to stop it. Ukraine won't stop it. The Ukrainian army won't pull its head out of its ass. They're bound to fight to the death because of some tunnel vision that tells them they're going to win, that they're better, they're superior, and they have to prove it. Nobody, no individual, right? And all throughout history, you rise till you're somewhere between 18 and 35, and then you slowly go downhill. And politicians may be cognitive, they could sit till their 50s and 60s. Some could go, like Trump, to their much older. But most of the time, you want someone in their 50s and 60s at best. There for a short time, and then they're gone. Ukraine has got to learn, like every other country hasn't learnt anyway. You don't keep wartime leaders. You don't encourage wartime leaders. And any politician doesn't keep their word, you kick them out. Because they've got bad judgment. I'm in my own country, I'm sick and tired of hearing politicians say the circumstances have changes. Well, you should have seen it coming. Or you shouldn't have made promises you can't keep. Or you should have been more intelligent in your decision making. Because you have the information, we don't. We have to go off what you tell us. And if you make a mistake and come back 6 months later and say, oh, circumstances have changed, well, golly, we can't trust you. And why this is a hard lesson to learn is because so many people have that arrogant pride that tells them, no, I'm always right. Mummy said I was perfect. Yeah. And who am I? I thought truth would win out, right? I thought, I thought people would rally to the truth and want to hear the truth. Yeah, who am I? I'm just trying to red pill you all and Nobody wants to be red. Not yeah, but then again, I shouldn't be surprised. Throughout history, the majority went P.T. Barnum for the circus and pomp and performance. More people wanted the lies than the truth. But that's the state of the Ukraine war. Lies. It's sustained on lies. It's sustained on right now governments desiring to test weapons and to wear Russia out. Whereas I'm telling you right now, China is playing it all and is sitting there waiting for an opportunity. And the Democrats, they're just making things worse. They're always trying to undermine Trump because all they care about is getting into office. They don't care what damage it does to the rest of the world as long as they get into office. They don't care what damage they do to America as long as they get into office. All they think about is now, now, now. And the rest will sort itself out. It doesn't. We're seeing it. We're seeing it. Things move slowly, but eventually you get to the point of an avalanche. And then you go, well, what happened? And you ignore the fact, right? You ignore the facts. And when you look back, you say, geez, it was a huge mistake for Bill Clinton to go into Serbia. Hell yeah, that was a huge, huge mistake. And it's going to come back to bite you on the ass. You wouldn't prosecute Clinton. That was a huge mistake. And it was a huge mistake not prosecuting Biden over 9/11 and the mishandling of intelligence. He was a senator involved and responsible. You never hold people responsible. That's the problem. You keep hearing about it. Oh, we're holding people responsible. No, you're not. Who's holding you responsible then? Thank you for watching. I'll leave you on that thought. Like, share, and subscribe, please. I gotta ask because otherwise people won't do it. You can support me on Ko-Fi, Patreon, buy my books, buy my merch. I appreciate all those who help support the channel. Thank you, one and all. All my links are in the link tree, which you'll find in the profile, QR code in the screen. Occasionally, yes, it is also in my, I put it in the description. See you in the next video, and bye for now.